Is it Molly or?
It's me. I'm recording.
Oh,
Oh,
hey,
you are
hey,
recording.
Molly.
Are you, Molly, are you also like letting people in the waiting room?
Yep, I will be in charge of that.
Okay. Um, Chelsea, should we start or should we wait a little bit?
Let's start.
Okay. Well, a very good afternoon and a very good evening for those of you that are in Europe. My name is Kirill Avramov, and I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Slavic and Eurasian Studies here at the University of Texas at Austin. And this is our last Balkan Circle, which is for this season. Then we'll see, as my understanding, Chelsea, is that, hopefully the circle will continue next year, even if the department is different than what it is now. And since today there is a very interesting guest and lecture, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Chelsea West of an associate professor. Congratulations at our department to introduce the topic and our guest today.
Great. Thank you, Krill. Of course, I'm as a scholar who does research in Albania, very biased to excitedly welcome our speaker today, Dr. Klejd Këlliçi, who is a professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Tirana in Tirana, Albania. He holds his PhD from the University of Bari in Italy in comparative politics. He's been affiliated with the University of Tirana since November 2015. Dr. Këlliçi's interests span political science, history, gender studies, biopolitics, and necropolitics, as well as memory studies in the Albanian and broader Eastern European context. He has authored and co-authored numerous articles dealing with themes including the use of dead bodies in political regimes and memory politics in Albania. And some of those titles include Reburials, Nationalism and Regimes, Identity, Dead Bodies and Regimes of Memories, the 1930s and 1970s, which is what he's presenting on today, as well as history and memory. He has a monograph, Mi Varim për Çdo Regime, A Burial for Every Regime. It came out in 2023 that analyzes how different Albanian regimes used burials and bodies in public memory and political legitimacy. So please help me to welcome Dr. Këlliçi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, should I start after
Yes,
the
yes, you
presentation?
can start. And just know that some of us will be camera off while you present, just so that the focus can be on your presentation. But please start. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a research that this is an article which I wrote on 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, and was published in History and Memory. And this is what I'm presenting today. My focus of this presentation is on reburials, nationalism, and regime change. This is a topic which focuses mostly on identity, dead bodies, and regimes of memory in Albania in the 30s and 70s. I chose this span period which incorporates, let's say, three regime change from the monarchical period to the fascist period, 39-43, and from 45 onward to the 70s. Why I stopped to the 70s? I could have continued, but I think that in terms of reburials, and nationalist-based politics, the monarchical or authoritarian regime, the fascist totalitarian regime, and the totalitarian communist regime were far more incisive than, let's say, the post-communist regimes in the 90s in terms of remaking dead bodies, destroying cemeteries, refashioning all the necro, let's say, heritage of Albania, especially the communist regime in the 60s and 70s. I see these reburials, especially um, uh, at the time when it's not very clear if this regime had to really need to use this necro political drive in order to legitimate themselves. They were already legitimate, but I see these reburials especially as a sort of showing their success, let's say, or let's say it's some kind of pinnacle of their strength. So by these reburial processes, regimes show their strength. Reburials are connected also with repatriation of dead bodies and repatriation of dead bodies, which has been a constant political, let's say, motive or objectives of monarchical, not fascist, because it was a short period of time, but especially of the communist regimes. So searching for the bodies of famous Albanians across the Mediterranean space, mostly, but also in other places. The historical context of these reburials is in the 30s and 70s, monarchy under King Zog, nation building phase, nation and state building phase, Italian fascist occupation during World War II connected with the further modernization of the country and the idea of inserting Albania within this broader imperial pseudo-Roman community that fascist Italy was trying to build during the World War II. And also later the post-war communist regime with its centralized authority. Each regime tried to reshape national identity and memory, keeping some markers like stable, reinforcing them, reshaping them, introducing new elements of commemoration. But each and every time these regimes try to erase, let's say, the memory built in the previous regime, like remaking dead bodies anew. So my central thesis is that dead bodies and reburials are not neutral or commemorative acts. They are they come with meaning, with political meaning. They actively construct a collective memory. Reburials and dead bodies, they construct a collective memory. They serve to legitimize not simply the political authority, but also to show the strength and the capability of the political authority. Each and every time regimes exert this power of finding dead bodies, they project somehow their power and capability. We will see later, especially during communism, this context of trying to recuperate, even in distant places, dead bodies of famous or prominent Albanians. Reburials redefine national identity over time, because each and every time dead bodies assume a new meaning. And of course, memory is shaped by those who have political power. And of course, those who have political power wants to show this capability or this the idea of having some kind of monopoly over the some symbolic markers like dead bodies. In order to let's say develop my this presentation, I borrow from concept of broader dead body political studies like control over human remains, control of historical narrative based on, especially on Verder's work. Also on the idea that burial sites are political and important cultural markers, not simply dead body, but also the burial site per se. So the making and remaking of burial sites changes the meaning of the dead body, of dead bodies. This control over human remains, control over historical narrative is also linked with state rituals. State rituals like reburials reinforce ideological messages. Of course, remaking tombs or remake or exhumation of dead bodies is accompanied also by grandiose ceremony, mass public ceremony involving selectively different representative stratas of population, as we will see also in some of the photos that I will share with you. Dead bodies become symbol of national identity. Of course, they are handpicked and chosen within the vast repertory of dead bodies, and some dead bodies become symbol of national identity, some loses this status, and here I'm referring to the concept of necro-nationalism. But the care of for specific dead bodies is a constant is a constant theme across regimes, even democratic regimes, because corpses are active agents and they influence the living. By far, the care of dead bodies is a constant preoccupation, especially of modern regimes since the end of the French Revolution, or making of nation states. Each and making of nation states is accompanied by a repertoire of exhibiting dead bodies and building monuments and monumental sites, which are, of course, remade over the course of history. I also, sorry, one moment, please. I also uh, um, I also tackle the idea of regimes of memory, because these dead body are inserted in some kind of specific memory setting, which is knowledge and power, which is carried in specific time and place by particular discourses of memory. Each and every time a body is reburied, it's accompanied with a specific discourse linked with a specific agent of power. In our case, for example, King Zog for the Frasheri brothers, as we will see later, or during fascism with the Italian fascist authorities, or during communism with the communist regime. Regimes of memory begin with your interpretation of a distant past within the present ideological discourse. Each and every time the official memorial discourse changes, dead bodies are polished from some aspects. They are equipped with other specific elements and so on. And of course, in terms of regimes of memory, there is a controls of rituals of remembrance. Um, so I I will come to the case study because I'm getting too long with the theoretical part. So the case study that I've chosen is are the Frasheri brothers. The Frasheri brothers are prominent figures of a national awakening, a specific period of time from the second or first half of the 19th century to the foundation of the Albanian state in 1912. They represent through their work, intellectual and political work, the political and foundation of political states. The Frasheries have featured prominently and still feature prominently in the Albanian memorial and political discourse, and their symbolic value have transcended specific regime, or it has been appropriated by specific regime. Reburials in this case reinterpret their legacy. So each and every time there has been a reburial of, at least in this case of one of the Frashery brothers, which has been reburied at least five times, and there are people thinking that he will be reburied another one. I will explain later. But reburials reinterpret this legacy repeatedly. They have served as a focal point for national identity construction. So these are the Frashery brothers. I've chosen some stems. The first on your left is Abdul Naim Frashery, the second is Sami Frashery, and the on your right is Abdul Frashery. They lived in a specific period and very tumultuous period of time, which coincides with this national awakening movement, which basically can be assumed in various intellectual, political, and social initiatives in order to frame and shape the Albanian national identity in order and later to produce an Albanian state. A national awakening is let's say a movement which is common for not only for the Balkans but also for many other for many nationalist group across Europe who was looking in forming their nation state. Albania is a latecomer in this period because it's the last of the Balkan countries to gain independence from the Ottoman Empire, and of course the Frashery brothers feature prominently in this continuous, which has been labeled sort of effort to achieve Albania's independence. If we the three brothers they die in Istanbul in late 19th century. They are all buried there. At the time, Istanbul was the biggest, let's say, Albanian city in the sense that it was a city containing the largest Albanian population, which was common for many other ethnicities in the Ottoman space. Most of their activity, most of their intellectual and political activity of these Frashery brothers spent from Albania to Istanbul. And of course, they died and they were buried in various religious cemeteries in Istanbul. During in the 1920s, the Albanian states began to consolidate, especially with the arrival of Zog, which is declared the president of Albania in 1925. The republic lasts for around 3 years, and then Zog, in a Bonapartesque fashion, is asked by the parliament, in this case, not in the like in the case of Bonaparte, but by the Albanian parliament to become king of Albania. So he's given the crown, invested by the parliament with the title of monarch. Zog's spirit has been fundamental for the consolidation of state power and the building of the institution. It's a phase of modernization of Albania, and of course this modernization is sought also in a symbolic order. So during the 30s, especially in 1937 is the 25th anniversary of the Albania's independence. So the monarchical Zog regimes is trying to infuse this commemoration with also featuring like dead bodies. For example, Ismail Cemali, the father of Albanian independence, is reburied. It's taken from his family burial place from Kanina in Vlor to Vlor, and the regime builds a modern, let's say, modern grave, which is still today there. Also, the Naim Frashri is being exhumed and repatriated from Turkey, not without problems. In fact, the regimes, the Albanian authorities in Istanbul want to repatriate all the Frashri, the three Frashri brothers, and they succeed only repatriating one. The other two Frashri brothers, Sami and Abdul, their family members, they do not allow for them to be reburied in Albania for various reasons. Sami is very important for the Turkish national identity, while Abdul is his son, which Mithat Frashi, which will come later to a prominent Albanian intellectual. He refused for his father to be reburied in Albania because he didn't want to give to the Zog's regimes the satisfaction of reappropriating his father's body, because Mithat Frashi was a Republican and some kind of he opposed Zog's regime. Anyway, the idea of reburying and exhuming and repatriating Naim Frashri had many meanings. First of all, the reburial was done under the authority and care of the king, and this was specified in the documents. So the King Zog, which have been, especially in the official 1930s discourse, paragonated or let's say paragonated to Skanderbeg as the new Skanderbeg. He was often labeled as the new. Skanderbeg was the Albanian mythical popular hero, which was popularized especially by Naim Frashri. So we have Zog, which wants to take care of personally of Naim's body. I failed to mention here that there was a risk that in the wake of modernization of Istanbul, there was a risk that this cemetery where Naim was buried could have been demolished, and one of the so what pushed the Albanian state to try to retrieve the body was also this urgency of losing the body of a nation saint, that as is described in the official documents. The reburial of Frashri had also another specific meaning. Zog was a very divisive personality. He had come to power by some during the tumultuous events of 1924-25. There was a coup d'etat or revolution, as it is described in the Albanian history. We still debate whether 1924 was a coup d'etat or a revolution. The official government was toppled by Theofanoli and a few other Albanian personalities. Then Zogs come to power in December in 24/5. He comes to power with the aid of the Serbo-Croat kingdom. So he is a very divisive, and many Albanians leave, politicians leave Albania, live abroad, and reburying and exhumating Naim Frasher and reburying him in Albania, repatriating was also a way to demonstrate to the diaspora the strength of the state. So the state, it was a state building, memorial dignity, and it was showing the consolidation of the state. So this was the message. Naim Frasher was buried. It is very. I would like to mention this detail. Naim was not buried permanently in his burial place. He was buried in the garden of the Bektashi seat. Bektashi is a tariqat who knows the religious composition of Albania. There are four official, let's say, or at least during Zog period, four religions: the Muslim, Sunni Muslim, the Bektashi, Orthodox, and Catholics. The Bektashi order, it was expelled from Turkey, found refuge in Albania, and Naim Frasher was part of this, as many people in southern Albania, he was part of this Bektashi way of Islamic belief, let's say. And the Bektashis feature prominently in the Albanian effort of state building and independence. But Naim was placed temporarily in the surrounding of the seat of the Bektashi order because there was a project which never materialized on building a pantheon. So the Zog regime wanted to build a pantheon where to reunite all these prominent Albanians abroad. Of course, the regime lasted 10 years, and 2 years after the reburial of Naim Frasher, the regime fell. Albania was occupied by Italy. The occupation was was never described as an occupation, but rather as a liberation. So Italy liberated Albania from this pre-modern satrap, King Zog, which was a despotic ruler of, let's say, an Oriental despotic ruler. Under the Italian occupation, Albania would gain its deserved modernity, and also within the Roman community, it would gain also the territories which Albania claimed from Greece or from the Yugoslav kingdom, territories inhabited by Albanians. And of course, in producing this narrative, the Italian and Albanian collaborators, or the Albanian who collaborated with the fascist regime, tackled also the question of these symbolic markers. And one of the prominent symbolic markers which was remade and refashioned was the Naim Frasher. The body of Naim Frasher was re-exhumed again and reburied at the same spot. This is one of the photos. There are several of these photos, and you see on the background the mountain deity and the monumental grave built this time under the care of the Viceroy Francesco Iacomoni di Sansovino, which was the Viceroy or the governor of Albania. And it's very interesting that this reburial took place the 9th of April, which coincided more or less with the 1 year of occupation of Albania by Italy. And one of the justification on remaking of Naim's grave was because the grave built during Zog was small and was not monumental enough. That's why the Albanian Italian authorities try to remake this grave. And the idea was that but the dead body of Naim would be the testimony of the progress Albania had made under fascism. And in this ceremony, which I have a full photo shoot from the Luce Institute, you can see the label on the right. You have a sort of microcosm of a fascist Albanian society. There are several photos with balilas, which are the kids which are part of these fascist organizations, the girls' fascist organization, the youth fascist organization, the Albanian army, which is now part of the fascist army, and so on. And of course, we have a lot of religious authorities. One of the important aspects of this ceremony, it is, yes, fascist. Yes, it shows the power of Rome and to the Albanians, but it also inserts Naim strongly, not simply within this national pantheon, but within the pantheon of the Bektashi order. The Italians are very careful in maintaining the balance between the various religious confession in Albania, and somehow part of the Zog's reforms on laicization of the state, on, for example, on forbidding the veil, etc., are retracted. So I think, even if it's not clear from the documents, that somehow the Italian authorities wanted to give or to make this to give to the Bektashi order its saint, and by remaking this monumental grave, somehow this place it's secured. Of course, Naim becomes also a seat of pilgrimage. A year later, during a congress on albanology, there are several authorities which make some pilgrimage, etc. So it becomes a place of pilgrimage, but it is unsure if this pilgrimage is of like fashion, or it has also some kind of religious characteristics. So the Italians play within this idea of Naim not being simply a national symbol, but also a religious symbol to the Bektashi. Then we come to the communist regimes. So I have not mentioned here what became of these graves during this transition period. Somehow Naim's grave was forgotten for some years. It stayed within the surroundings of this Bektashi order, and only 1950 the regimes during the centenary of the commemoration of Naim's death, the communist authorities remember its body, and remember where he is buried, and one of the and of course come with this idea of reburying Naim freshly. This time the ashes of Naim are moved from the seat of the Bektashi order to this near the today's seat of the Prime Minister's office, which is in the Boulevard de Dëshmorët, the main road artery in Tirana, or at that time it was the main road artery. Dëshmorët in English means the martyrs of the nation. And the label, the Martyrs of the Nations, it's not only symbolic, but during the early years of the communist regime, it's also material, in the sense that within this big alley, there are several, there are at least two groups of graves near what is today. I hope some of the audience know or can locate the National Gallery. There used to be several graves of communist authorities which had died during the war, but after the war. The last burial took place in 1970. So till the 1970, there was a group of 5 graves, and where is today is the National Gallery. And in 1950s, Naim also is buried there. By the end of the alley near the lake park, at the time there used to be the Martyrs Cemetery, the partisans fallen during the Second World War. So somehow, in this national communist imaginary, the Boulevard de Morte Combat is inhabited by graves of illustrious Albanians, among others, also the Naim Frashri. And I have here this photo, which is a group of photos. In the first photo is the Zini Saku, an Albanian writer, who is talking in the Congress commemorating the death of Naim Frashri. In the second photo is the bust of Naim Frashri and his grave near the Prime Minister's office. And in the other, there are several Albanian authorities. I can see the wife of Hoxha, Mehmet Sheu in the background, with which was the Prime Minister of Albania, if I'm wrong, at the time. So all these Albanian authorities, and the idea also was that somehow Naim was becoming the patron of the writers' art, the writers' union of Albania. And it's very interesting because the writers' union tried also in 45-6 to have another writer, Mijeni, a prominent Albanian poet of the 30s, and have Mijeni buried, taken from Italy where he died, taken to Albania, and maybe to bury Mijeni in the courtyard of the Writers Union office in Tirana. Fortunately, this never became reality. Mijeni was buried in the Martyrs Cemetery in Shkodra, if I'm not wrong, etc. It's very interesting that somehow the third reburial of Naim gave also a few years later life to a document which has been adopted by the Polish Bureau on the revolutionary and political tradition and the respective measures undertaken to propagate and further develop them. So what was this document? It was a very interesting document. Basically, it was the guidelines on exhume, on repatriating bodies of dead Albanians and attaching them to official festivities. So each festivity should have had also or should have been accompanied with a reburial of the prominent Albanian. And over the years, the communist regimes is invested heavily in repatriating several prominent Albanian, even in some fortuitous circumstances. And one of the also the centerpiece or the most important person to be, or the most important body to be repatriated were the bodies of Sami and Abdul Frashri. Somehow the regime wanted to build this kind of triadic memory, the Frashri brothers. So the Frashri brothers, which are featured heavily in the Albanian political discourse and symbology. They had to be reunited in the secret soil of the socialist homeland, and especially in the 60s and 70s after the Soviet split and during the Albanian Soviet split and during the exhibition of nationalist tendencies of the regime, especially in terms of this of creating this socialist and nationalist symbolic order, like investing heavily in building cemeteries, public monuments, etc. There is a frenzy and a monumentomania in the 60s and 70s, which begins with the inauguration of Skanderbeg statue in the central square, which earlier hosted Stalin in 1968. And then after 1968, now it features Skanderbeg. And almost every Albanian city is dotted with these monuments, which commemorate events from the Second World War, but also from earlier phases of Albanian history. Now, the Frashri brothers are part of this big project. The idea is to reunite them, and in the early from 72, 73 onward, the Albanian states wants to makes its effort to have the recuperated body of especially of both brothers Sami and Abdul, but Sami is not the Turkish Republic refuses to hand Sami and hands only Abdul. Now Abdul's body, so the older brother, which also is one of the prominent persons which founded the League of Prizren in 1878, a league which is commonly described in Albanian history as one of the first attempts to resist let's say to resist to pressures from foreign powers to carve up or divide Albanian territories. At the time after the Russo-Turkish War, several territories of the Ottoman Empire was given to the Montenegro, to this small state which will involve heavily in Albanian politics in later years. It's very interesting on the circumstances of the repatriation of the Abdul bodies, because there are several events and motives that conducts the regime in recuperating Abdul's body. The Abdul's body, the regime wants to feature Abdul's body in the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the League of Prizren. Who knows a little bit of Albanian history in terms of national symbolics? Two are the most important events which occur during the communist regimes, which are not connected with the war and the commemoration of the Second World War. And the first one is the 500th anniversary of the death of Skanderbeg, and the second major event is the 100th anniversary of the League of Prizren. And so the background is the commemoration of the League of Prizren, where several bodies of prominent Albanians were repatriated. Pashko Vasa, Hasan Prishtina are repatriated in the 77. December 77, they are buried they are taken. Pashko Vasa is taken from Lebanon, which is in the middle of the civil war, and yet the Albanian authorities go there and even have talks with the PLO, with some PLO representatives in the middle of this um, of this events of taking the Pashko Vasa's body, for example. Hassan Pristina is taken from a Muslim cemetery, which is going to be demolished by Greek authorities later, and is reburied in later in Kukas. Abdul Badi is very important in this event because the most valuable of all these names that I have mentioned to be featured in this grandiose ceremony, which you see in the background. I'm sorry for the quality of the picture, but it is a screenshot from a documentary. And so Abdul is re-exhumated from Istanbul. There are some minor incidents in this re-exhumation because Abdul Badi is contended by members of the Albanian diaspora. As I mentioned earlier, the son of Abdul is Mithat Frashri. Mithat used to be at the time used to be the head of the National Front or Bali Komtar, the organization which contended power with the Communist Party during the Second World War. After the war, he is in exile. He dies in exile, and part of the Albanian diaspora which lives in Istanbul and is affiliated with Bali Komtar takes care of the Abdul's body. But nevertheless, the Albanian authorities somehow fights off these claims, and it's very funny story that the grave of Abdul is guarded 24 hours by a group of people, which is promised in return, which are loyal to the communist regime, but is promised in return a shipment of chromium ore. And I found this very extremely hilarious. So it is very important that after the body of Abdul is exhumated from the cemetery in Istanbul, even the marble slabs are taken in the embassy. And in fact, the person who is in charge, who is a member of the Sigurimi by the Albanian consulate in Istanbul, he writes in his memories, "We even took the slabs from our enemies so that they cannot commemorate even an empty grave." And Abdul is taken to Albania, and when his body comes through Kakari, the Albanian-Greek border, Albanian authorities have organized a sort of grandiose meetings and popular gatherings, and in fact, he's laid to rest in his hometown of Permet for 3 months. The coffin becomes a place of pilgrimage, continuous pilgrimage from people from across the southern Albania, and then the 10th of June, his body is taken to Tirana, and you can see in the background this kind of important, very extremely important meeting that is organized with the participation of all party authorities, Enver Hoxha, the first secretary, the then Prime Minister Mehmet Shehu, and so on. Secretly, the other brother Naim is re-exhumed, and his coffin is taken to the central square in order to be sent to a common burial place, which has been to a monument which has been erected in the outskirt, in the hills of Tirana, and you can see it in the background. There are some children, pioneers laying flower to these monuments. Um, and who has come to Tirana, who visits Tirana and goes by the lake park, will see these monuments of the Frasheri brothers. And near the monuments, not far from this grandiose entrance, there is a big rock which has a plaque on it, and the plaque says basically this used to be the burial site of the cemetery of the martyrs of the nations. So the cemetery of the martyrs of the nations was reserved to the partisans fallen in the Second World War. Later, in late 60s, relocated to another place. But when the authorities were thinking where to place the bodies of the Frasheri brothers, they thought of this place. So in the former cemetery of the martyrs of the nation are the bodies are placed the bodies of this of Naim and Abdul. Um, and somehow it's through this monument it's rebuilt this kind of triadic memory of the Frasheri brothers, which is not simply like uniting them in death, even though the one of the body of Sami is not there, but the way the monument is built, it's sort of this L-shaped. It's a common monument, so it's not with separated graves. Somehow to tell this kind of symbolic unity of the brothers, and this symbolic unity, it's also united within the sacred soil of the homeland, unity within the socialist paradise. And this is also mentioned by Mehmet Shehu in this address on the occasion. So this is the resting place in the sacred soil of the motherland. If the Frasheri brothers also could see today what we have achieved what they wanted. We have achieved the progress under the aegis of the and care of the party and the Verhoja and so on. So this was the sense of the discourse of Mehmet Shehu. And I don't know how much time do I have, but in my final remarks are that all regimes use Reburial as political tools, not simply to claim legitimacy, but to reinforce legitimacy and also to insert somehow dead Albanians within a specific narrative, even though the symbolic practices across the regimes do not change as much. Or they have minor changes. For example, of course, the Frasheri grave evolved from, let's say, a religious or let's say a typical Muslim grave to a more modern and secular grave like the last one we have. But even religious graves were inscribed with national elements like the eagle or several scriptures which remembered the homeland and their basic ideas. Of course, there are differences in the ideological interpretation from the more personalistic Zogist interpretation to the rather socialistic somehow interpretation. It's very interesting that, for example, Sami Frasheri is also featured within this kind of leftist tradition in Albania. So he is inscribed in this kind of leftist. So who wants to find the roots of the left in Albania will also mention Sami Frasheri heavily. These are the same figures, but given different political meaning. And of course, Reburials revere this competition over historical narratives. Now I want to emphasize the idea of the rituals. Of course, Reburials come with with the funeral. And the funeral has a function of a public spectacle, which involves controlled mass participation and controlled mass representative participation, especially during communism. It's scenic, it's choreographic, it's staged, and it's heavily controlled. And the idea is to repeat some narratives, and this repetition embeds narratives within the society. And especially during communist regimes, these reburials take place always at the same place, at the under the statue of Skanderbeg, where the statue serves as the background of the podium, where all the ceremonies take place with highest honors, etc. And of course, these ceremonials serve to reinforce this kind of trade union between the past and the present. So the national awakening is presented as as being fulfilled by the communist regimes. And some other implication about memory. Memory is constructed rather than inherited, or somehow, even if it's inherited, it can be reconstructed depending on the monopoly of how knowledge and history is disseminated. And of course, historical and memorial discourse is shaped by political power, and control over the past influences present identity. And this is especially during communist regimes, and especially in 70s, where 70s and late 70s, where hard times begin to appear. So Albania heads gradually into some kind of stagnation and economical crisis, and of course, these ceremonials serve to reinforce not simply the idea of the triumph of socialism, but also the idea that socialism is something that it's worth fighting for, and this kind of political figures which are repatriated, reburied within even this socialist built monument, like the cemetery of the martyrs. So many of these people which I mentioned, like Hasan Pristina, Pashko Vasa, and others, they are inserted in this kind of martyr cemetery, which of course commemorate more those fallen in the Second World War rather than those than past heroes. Yet they are somehow ingested with this kind of sacrificial narrative. Only the frasheries are featured separately, but even the frasheries are inserted with this kind of socialist or sacrificial memory. And I will show you this is the recent photo of the monument. And I remember from consulting the documents, for example, that the then Minister of Education, Thoma Deliana, like drafting the guidelines on how this monument had to be built, he was writing that it doesn't have to remind of a grave; it has to remind people of a monument to be commemorated rather than bodies to be commemorated. So the bodies would feature like lower than the monument itself, because Deliana was saying that we don't want to that people passing by. This spot is highly frequented even today in Tirana. We don't want people to remember death, but rather sacrifice or accomplish sacrifice in today's, let's say, progress achieved by the party. And so, as a conclusion, so reburials are central to national building process, but also to regime building process. Its regime tries to reshape the past, especially regimes which somehow pretend to start from a tabula rasa perspective, and memory becomes also sort of political struggle, and who controls memory somehow controls identity. So I don't know if I completed my time, but I think that I have finished my presentation. So please, the floor is yours, and who wants to make some questions?
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Klejd. Thank you. Really, that was really great. I was over here taking some notes, and we have about 15, 20 minutes for some questions. I'm gonna just check because I see I see some questions over here in the or some comments in the chat. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what
Chelsea,
would you
if you want, yes, there are, lively discussion, going on while the presentation went. So first of all, we would like to thank you very much for this wonderful presentation because it contained a lot of new information. I do have two questions to kickstart the discussion, if you allow me, Chelsea, because I found to be quite interesting and exciting, actually, because this is a phenomenon from my perspective that is, goes beyond the borders of Albania. So my first question would be about the specific role of religion in all of this, in all its forms, because we're dealing with multiple reburials, multiple rituals. So this is one. And my second one is how did ordinary Albanians throughout, have you looked at evidence of how did they perceive all of this? Was this only a state theater per se, or saw it as really kind of like sacralized, as you've explained to it, rituals that are to be observed? So, in essence, was this about regime survival and popularity, or it is something strict? And actually, a third one, um, what are the because there are a number of things when we deal with the Balkans, you're well aware of, as you mentioned, anywhere from, and not only in the Balkans, with Reburials, Imre Nagy, Dimitrov, you name it, mausoleums and so on. So what is the specifically Albanian? I think I understood specifically when you were talking about this whole process, between Tirana and Istanbul, and specifically the Bektashi order. But is there something, which makes this phenomenon distinct in the Albanian case, as opposed to other reburials or familiar? Thank
Um,
you.
yes and no. So the first question about religiosity. I'll start from the end. So the head of the Bektashi order was asked a few years ago, what do you think about this Naim Frashri and his rebirths? And he say, I don't exclude one day that we can give Naim the same place he had many years ago. So he was not excluding a sixth reburial of Naim Frashri, so the return in place of origin. It's very difficult to understand the role of religion. I can only see the photos. I haven't checked the files of the Bektashi order on the specific ceremony if they were involved. At that time, I think the first reburial, they were the custodians of Naim because Zog intended to build a pantheon. But somehow he wanted to accommodate also the Bektashis. The Italians wanted to accommodate all religious communities in Albania. So they invested heavily in this grave to be maintained there. After communism, of course, the idea to take Naim from that place was to take revenge on the Italians who had desacralized Naim's memory by building the grave. So the idea to destroy the Naim's grave or to take Naim from that place and bring it to the Tirana center was to destroy the memorial legacy of fascism and of the Albanian collaborators. Not simply to take Naim from the let's say, the custody of the Bektashis, because we are not at a period in which the religious is being outlawed in Albania. It's a middle period. The 50s are a middle period. About the population, I don't have evidence about the reactions from the Zog period. I know that when Naim's body came from Kakavi to Tirana, people were mobilized to attend the convoy of cars bringing Naim. So there was some kind of ceremoniality. But I know that at least in Permet, so when Abdul Frashri, the brother in 1978, he was taken from Istanbul and then taken to Permet in his house. So if you see my presentation, there, if you remember, there is a gray house, the house of the Frashri brothers in the Frashri village. The body of Abdul is laid to rest in this museum, and thousands of people visit. And of course, there was a book of people writing. There are some addresses, and these are not simply staged addresses, because we are talking about a very small community permit. So I think that there is some kind of well felt of heartfelt participation, like the sun returning to its place of origin, because of course by associating with the Frashri brothers Permet and the Frashri village profits a lot in terms of symbolicism and in terms of importance. So we cannot discount this kind of local importance, despite the political dimensions. And I can mention you also another thing, that, as I mentioned, the Pashko Vasa, a famous poet, who wrote a poem, Omo Shqipni, which is very famous. He coined the phrase, like the religions of Albania is Albanism.
Uh-huh.
And he died in Lebanon, in Beirut. He was taken. He was taken from Beirut in the middle of the civil war. And I have accounts of these PLO fighters which went to meet the Albanian ambassador to ask for weapons and money from Albania. And he was treating he was negotiating with the Lebanese authorities. So it's very
Uh-huh.
interesting story how in the middle of the civil war, somebody goes just there to take some bones. And he was taken to
Uh-huh.
Albania together with the body of his wife and children, but they were separated. So they were sent to the wife and children were sent to the communal cemetery, while Pashko Vasa was
Uh-huh.
sent to the martyr cemetery. And so there are different layers of interplaying. So you
Uh-huh.
have the idea of this of the commemoration of the centenary of the
Uh-huh.
League of Prizren, but the League of Prizren is being commemorated also in Yugoslavia, in Prizren. So you have competing narratives, let's say.
Uh-huh.
And the third question, can you remind me what is different of Albania specific?
Yeah, yeah. What
There
was the
is
one? Thank you for addressing,
there is
specifically the spontaneous, part. That was what was interesting to me,
yeah,
and what makes it purely Albanian, or what is
well,
specifically Albanian.
not this part. What makes if you mentioned the Dimitrov case and the mouse. So for example, Enver Hoxha categorically refused the construction of a mausoleum.
Hmm.
When he
Okay.
was presented with the project of the nation of this martyr cemetery, which was built in Tirana by late 60s and 70s, he was presented also with the idea of a mausoleum, and he categorically refused the idea of a mausoleum, and he said he wanted to be buried among his comrades.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the idea of this kind of permanent fighting, or the idea of holding the war as sacred, makes Albania different. So Enver Hoxha, in his death, didn't want to be like the other communist leaders. So he categorically refused the idea of a mausoleum. He wanted to be part of this kind of narrative of common fight, of being the commander of the partisans which has died in war, etc., etc. But it is another story and another presentation. So I think that
Thank
this
you
is
very
the
much.
specificity of Albania. So thank you.
Thank you very much for addressing this. Chelsea?
Yes, I was just checking to make sure because we had someone here. I don't know if Sumor, if I'm saying that right, if Sumor is still here or not, but in the chat, they had asked or
Yes,
they had
I'm
said,
here.
okay, Sumor, would you like to
Summer.
elaborate from what you wrote here?
Sure. When you were talking about I think it was Sami, who was not
Sami
able to
Frash,
be
yes.
repatriated and being in Turkey, it just kind of reminded me of kind of similar issues in Latin America and Spain with certain prominent figures and they passed away and then saying we want this figure to be a part of we see them as a national of our nation. And then like say with Mexico and Spain, and I kind of was thinking about Sophon and Cruz and this kind of fight of like where are we going to put her. So I was wondering um if that also was a part of not wanting to move those two other Flashaway brothers to Albania, that somehow were they like a part also of the Turkish national narrative
Absolutely.
after that the empire collapsed?
Let me begin with an anecdote. I was 20 something, and in 1997, and I found a post stamp of Iran, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, featuring Naim Frashri. So Naim Frashri is regarded as a prominent poet because he's written in Persian, in Farsi. I think that's the correct. At that time, Iran was trying to rekindle some kind of relations with Albania. They even invested in some kind of cultural projects. Iran wanted to incorporate this Bektashi order within the Shia, and they were competing with the Saudi Arabia. So what this tells, and I will connect it with the figure of Sami. These are persons which has multiple identities. They live in an imperial environment. They are well dotted in Farsi, in Ottoman language. They are multiple. So they are intellectuals, well-rounded intellectuals. So they are even Sami was extremely important. I think he wrote a dictionary, a Turkish dictionary, I guess. But also Sami is very important for Albania. He wrote important political manifesto, Albania, what it was, what it is, and what it wants to become. And so these are personalities with different layers. But Sami is very specific. Sami's children and nephews, they lived in Turkey at the time, and they refused the request of Albania, and of course under the pressure of the uh, Turkish authorities, and they excluded. And it was very interesting, but at the time, the 78, Turkey was in turmoil, and somehow the Turkish authorities said to the Albanian authorities, if you want, you can take Abdul now. Later, it will be impossible. Let's just take him now, but not Sami. Never asks for Sami. And Sami was refused. Also, repatriation was refused even during the 30s, etc. So, of course, there was some kind of debate. But these bodies, they were claimed also by other entities. But Abdul body, for example, was claimed also by Albanians in Kosovo, because this was this kind of competing narrative. So the League of Prizren was viewed in a certain way by the Albanian authorities, and in a certain way by the Albanians in Kosovo. And there were debates also in Tirana for the centenary of League of Prizren on these competing narratives in the Academy of Science, how this was seen as a kind of starting point of an Albanian state project, or as a rebellion against the Ottomans, etc., or the rebellion against foreign powers, etc. Um, so there was also debates, and but is featured in these debates also.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Klejd.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. I do have one. It's but I don't. I want to also make sure that those who are attending today, if anyone else had a question they wanted to ask, if not, um, I will ask a question. Just making sure. So Clay, thank you again. I'm learning so much, and in particular, because we had Isa Bloomy a couple of years ago give a talk about Fan Noli, and he really
Uh,
situated Fan Noli kind of globally. And what I really like about your talk today is that you give us this Albanian history, but you really situate it within the context of Lebanon and Iran and a lot of things that I did not know. So thank you for that. This was really interesting. I'm very curious, though, in thinking about contemporary or more recent reburials, because I write about Enver Hoxha's burial site now, his current burial site in my book. But as he was buried during the period of the regime, and then he was reburied. And I'm very curious about because when I went to visit the first time, I was shocked with how many plastic flowers there were covering his grave. And I'm very curious about the memorial sites of any of these national figures. Do people still have like contemporary practices where they gather and mourn? I say this because I used to live up one of my apartments in Tirana was off Sami Frasheri, but the only reason I was aware of that was because it was the street that I lived off of. I'm just curious what contemporary practices look like.
well, most contemporary practice are staged. Somehow, it's very interesting that the anniversary of the League of Prizren, which is linked to the Frasheri brothers,
Right.
it's more remembered in Kosovo right now because
Mhm.
it's more important there than in Albania. Somehow, it's forgotten even by the authorities. uh, sorry, in Albania. Let's say it depends on the specific situation. So in let's say provincial cities, like the monuments of these famous Albanians, or even the monuments of the Second World War, are each and every year. There is a commemoration organized by municipalities. Tirana is a bit of neutral grounds, but linking to what you said. So this practice of reburials didn't stop with the regime. So, for example, to the Frashi brother monuments, there are two other graves attached. One is for Faiko Nica, as prominent
Mhm.
intellectual. He was repatriated in 1996, and a colleague of mine, Nisul Starova, hinted in one of our discussions that Berisha and their government so the Albanian government wanted to repatriate Konica in order to overshadow somehow the legacy of the Frasheri brothers, which had been appropriated by the communist regime.
Right.
And a few years ago, Mitat Frashri, the son of Abdul, was repatriated from the United States. And it's very curious that Albanians are maintaining a cenotaph, or the empty grave of so Mitat has two graves, one in the States and one in Tirana. And Mitat was repatriated under the care of Edi Rama, of the prime minister, and Rama went even to in a sort of discussion with several members of his party, which didn't see it with quite well, because Mitat was the head of the Bali Komtar. And so it clashed with the narrative of the Socialist Party, which commemorates the Second World War. But Rama was he had in his speech, it's a very interesting speech. Rama commemorated Sami Mithat as a foremost intellectual, and Rama is a very strange creature and prime minister because he often identifies with these intellectuals, with let's say, kind of critique-based intellectuals like Konitsa or Mithat. So the reburial of Mithat was because Mithat was a foremost intellect. So Rama identifies somehow with this group of critical intellectuals like Konitsa, etc., and Mithat. Talking about Enver Hoxha, part of the book I've written on reburials and regimes, it's on Hoxhas, like reburial or exhumation. And
Hmm.
Hoxha was exhumed the 3rd of May of 1992, and it was very interesting. Why? Because there is this annual ceremony of honoring the fallen of the Second World War, which is the 5th of May. The 5th of May, curiously, is also the Martyrs' Day in Kosovo as well. But Berisha wanted to make this visit as a president. He had to visit the graves of the fallen, unless he wanted a clear separation from the Second World War. So he had to go there. So the Council of Prime Minister decides on the exhumation of Hoxha and several other Albanian authorities of the communist period, using the same legislation of the communist regime. So since these people were not heroes, they had to be exhumated. And the communist regime had used this practice uh, earlier in the 60s, exhumating many persons which were buried in the martyr cemetery, but which was not martyrs. So, and he is buried in this communal cemetery outside Tirana. Of course, his grave is visited, but by nostalgics, of course, you have these plastics, but the plastic flowers give the sign of permanence.
Right.
So somehow they are permanent there. I have never been to a commemoration of the 16th of October when he's died, or he is remembered. We have this double ceremonials at the Martyr Cemetery in Tirana, the 5th of May. So we have the Prime Minister, which goes there at a certain time. He lays some flowers, not at the graves of the martyrs, but at the monument of the Mother Albania, which is central monument statue. Uh, and we have the members of the opposition, which lay flowers to the grave of an Albanian of Azem Haidari, the leader of the student protest, which was murdered in 1998 for other reasons than political, to my opinion. But Azem Haidari was exhumated in 2013 or 13, I guess, and reburied at the Martyr Cemetery in Tirana. So we have these double ceremonies in the 5th of May. We even have triple ceremonies at some point, because the Democratic Party split a few years ago. There were two Democratic parties. So Sali Berisha was going there, Lulzim Basha, the head of the Democratic Party, with the daughter of Azem Haidari, was going there. Even a split family of Azem Haidari, like the sister going with Lulzim Basha to commemorate Azem, and Berisha with the son. So we have this kind of crazy stories and one of the reasons I didn't include the post-communist regime in this kind of reburial history, because the post-communist regime want to adapt to this legacy. So it's
Yeah.
unable to destroy the communist legacy because it's so pervading, and it leads to so many clashes, the pulling of monuments, remaking monuments. Then so you have the post-communist regime like adding up to this kind of memory. So, for example, the martyrs cemetery across Albania are being used even today for fallen policemen in the during duty, etc. So it was very alive, this kind of necrophiliac tradition that we have. Um, and and so so we also have even with the idea of Skanderbeg, for example, we have a memorial. It doesn't have bones, and a few years ago, 2 years ago, there was a ritual of it's called Jama Burave. It's a ritual of crying of the dead body in the mountains of Albania. So we have the inscenation of this Jama Burave by this man dressed in national attire around a place which doesn't hold a grave. There is nothing, but we still have this kind of cenotaph of Skanderbeg. So of course, it's much alive, this kind of tradition on dead bodies and symbolic politics on dead body graves, I would say, rather than bones in
Right,
specific.
right.
So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it. And for those who asked, as my colleague Kirill said, we will post the talk. Thank you for attending this final session of the Balkan Circle for the spring 2026 semester. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day and evening for those of you who are not based in the US. Thank you again so much, Klejd.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chelsea.
Really appreciate
Thank
you.
you
it.
for all of you that were participated. And we are happy that you were allowed us to record, because all of our guest talks that were permitted by the authors are in our YouTube channel, and we encourage everyone to go and look because they're topical. They're also divided by country, and it's a really nice catalog of what we have accomplished throughout the years with Balkan Circle. Thank you very much.
May,
And
may I add something? I had the occasion to watch the talk of Isa
Oh,
today,
yes.
Isa Blue, and another presentation on Fiume. I haven't finished it yet, but it's very
on a few
interesting.
minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I really thank you for those very insightful presentation and for this initiative, which I really enjoyed very much. So thank you again. So see you in Tirana,
I'll see you
Chelsea.
in Tirana. Okay, thank you.